Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today's video is probably going to be the last theory video I put out about Metroid Prime 4 until after I actually start playing the game. We are but 4 sleeps away before the launch day for Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. It's been a long wait, 18 plus years I've been waiting for this game since it was teased at the end of Metroid Prime 3. And that teaser at the end of Metroid Prime 3 led to so many theories and speculations as to what would happen in Metroid Prime 4, all centering around Sylux. And we know that Sylux is playing a significant role as Samus' arch-rival throughout the events of Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, at least. But there's still so much we don't know about who Sylux is, and what are his intentions, and what will he do throughout the events of Metroid Prime 4. Well, that's what we're getting into today. Who is Sylux, what are his plans, and what will happen throughout the journey of Metroid Prime 4? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Do you find yourself feeling tired, unable to take a good nap during the day from wherever you may be? Then perhaps you are in need of a soft, comfortable sleep mask that blocks out all light. Fortunately, Manta Sleep, the sponsor for today's video, has just that, a quality sleep mask. This sleep mask has super soft, comfy cushions that cover your eyes and block out all light. It's easy to adjust to different sizes, and it feels great to wear. And it's helped me personally fit in just a bit more rest during my days. So if you're looking to improve your sleep and energy, check out the Manta Sleep mask using the link in the description below with my code SLEEPRESTART. And if you do so between the dates of November 28th to December 2nd, you're going to be able to enjoy some extra Black Friday, Cyber Monday sales. You spend more, you save more. And there will be a surprise product drop. Now's your chance. Now, as I talk about different points throughout this video, I just want you all to keep in mind that I made a prior video yesterday talking about the mystery of Viros and how the Lemorn are related, and how a lot of it seems to pertain to time travel, and several other key factors. I'll be making references to that video, so if you want a further, deeper explanation on some of the concepts I bring up throughout this video, and I didn't explain it fully in this video, that's because there's a whole other nearly 19-minute video talking about a lot of these things. That all said, let's now talk about what we know of Sylux. So, Sylux was first introduced in Metroid Prime Hunters, a game that came out for the Nintendo DS, and he survived the events of that game, but we then see him at the end of Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, following Samus' ship at the very end. But then many years later, in 2016, Nintendo released Metroid Prime Federation Force, which was meant to flesh out the story of the Federation Force, and at the very end of that game, we see Sylux break in or sneak into the Federation and steal a Metroid. He hatches it and then takes it away, presumably. And that's pretty much all we've seen of Sylux before the events of Metroid Prime 4. Beyond that, all we understand is that Sylux has a deep resentment for the Federation, including Samus by association. But going into the events of Metroid Prime 4, we understand, as I'm going to simply quote here from the introduction to Metroid Prime 4, determined to defeat Samus and the Galactic Federation, Sylux and his army of space pirates launched a series of attacks on Federation research facilities. So here, we already understand that Sylux is now leading the space pirates, and they are attacking various research facilities. And I already think this is a key clue as to what is going on. But I'll circle back to that in a moment. Something else that's a new big detail is that the Metroids now have the ability to take over different beings, different characters or creatures. It's implied from the Nintendo Japanese website that Sylux had something to do with a genetic mutation in these new Metroids that have this ability. And we see the Metroids literally take over Abrax, the first boss fight of the game. And we see the Metroid, once it's taken over Abrax, we can see that there are different blue membranes as targets on Abrax that have a red nucleus, looking very much like Metroids embedded into Abrax's body. And we actually see this again a few different times throughout different things that have been shown off for Metroid Prime 4. So the next boss in Metroid Prime 4, which we see in the opening to Planet Vero, so still likely within the first hour of Metroid Prime 4, we see Carvex, this plant-like boss, and when you open up its leaves to blast at it to take down its health, we can find one giant blue membrane with a red nucleus looking like a giant Metroid embedded into Carvex. And then we see a similar effect actually on another boss, Feneros, this lava dragon serpent looking thing that can literally spew lava. When it opens its mouth, we can see where what would be a tongue, we can see a blue membrane with a red nucleus, very much like what we've seen on both Carvex and Abrax. So there does seem to be a strong implication here that these Metroids will be taking over different bosses throughout the game, enhancing them and making them more of a threat. And this appears to be a result of what Sylux has done to the Metroids. Perhaps this all started with the Metroid he stole from the Federation, who he genetically mutated and then bred to have a whole bunch more, or cloned, something like that. But coming back to a key point I brought up earlier, Sylux has this focus on attacking different Federation research facilities. Why not just different Federation facilities? I think there's actually an important reason why Sylux is targeting just research facilities here. At first, I've considered that maybe it has to do with the artifact. However, as we talked about in yesterday's video, we've discovered from the demo of Metroid Prime 4, the artifact was actually found on planet Tanimar, and the Federation does not know what it is. In other words, how would Sylux know what it is and what it can do? Sylux might have a way to hack into different Federation Force intel and sneak in and find out what's going on. That may be how he was able to sneak into the Federation and steal the initial Metroid at the end of Federation Force. But if the Federation themselves have just found the artifact and have been testing around with it and have no idea what it does, even if Sylux heard of this artifact by hacking their information, he would also have no idea of its value. So I don't think Sylux specifically was targeting this particular research facility to get this artifact because he has no idea of its value unless somehow he knows something that the Federation doesn't, which is possible, but we have no evidence of that. What I think actually makes more sense is that Sylux has this plan to, yes, maybe take down the Galactic Federation, perhaps by getting more Metroids. He's going to different research facilities where there might be more Metroids that the Federation have been testing and experimenting on. That's pretty much how he got the first Metroid that we saw at the end of Federation Force. And Metroids are extremely powerful creatures. Sylux may be aiming to perhaps recreate Metroid Prime. Now, why might he do that? Because Metroid Prime was a huge threat to both Samus and the Galactic Federation beforehand, and the series is called Metroid Prime after all. For those that don't know, Metroid Prime is not just the title of the first game and just the name of the overall series, but actually the name of the main boss in Metroid Prime 1 and actually throughout the other games. Metroid Prime is a Metroid that's been genetically mutated and enhanced through Phazon radiation and becomes this superpowered, highly intelligent Metroid, who then steals the Phazon suit from Samus, which leads to the creation of Dark Samus, Samus's rival, throughout the events of Metroid Prime 2 and 3, but ultimately at its core is still Metroid Prime. But Metroid Prime is completely and utterly defeated at the end of Metroid Prime 3, and the source of Phazon radiation is also eliminated. But given that we do see Sylux is following Samus at the end of Metroid Prime 3 after all these events have transpired, it does at least indicate that Sylux is keeping tabs on Samus, and I would say this point is further implied by the fact that we haven't heard anything else happening between Samus and Sylux until the events of Metroid Prime 4. Why else would he be following Samus? If he was following Samus, you might have thought, oh, he's going to do something to Samus, but if he's just following her, nothing else has happened, it suggests that he's just keeping watch of her, trying to understand what's going on around her, which would be all the events throughout the initial Metroid Prime trilogy. Which would then further explain why he's then stealing Metroids, perhaps because he's seen what Metroids can do, and because he has this deep resentment for the Federation and Samus, he's trying to use them to gain an upper hand and take out the Federation. Perhaps ultimately leading to the creation of a new Metroid Prime, a new Prime Metroid. And we are essentially seeing that Metroids are functioning as parasites taking over different powerful bosses throughout Metroid Prime 4. So while it may not be a Metroid being genetically mutated into a superpowered Metroid Prime through Phazon radiation, we are essentially seeing that Metroids can still power up by taking over powerful boss enemies where they are essentially controlling them because they are parasites. At least that's how it kind of appears to be. We have actually found something like Phazon radiation that could perhaps also enhance the Metroids, but I'll share more on that later on into the video. So perhaps that is what Sylux's intent is. To create powerful Metroids and use them as tools to take out the Federation and Samus. But why does he want to do this? Well, we're not entirely sure. However, we do know this. We're going to learn a lot more about Sylux throughout Metroid Prime 4. It's already been confirmed that there will be voice lines of Sylux in Metroid Prime 4 from an article straight from Nintendo of Japan's website where it details the amiibo for Metroid Prime 4, and it talks about how the Sylux amiibo will play random lines for you to hear from Sylux, telling us that yes, there are going to be voice lines of Sylux throughout the story. Now if you've gone to this point in the video, let me simply point out that I do have this goal to reach 60,000 subscribers, so if you haven't subscribed already, and you're enjoying this video or some of my other videos, please subscribe. Continuing though, I actually imagine, based off what they've shown from the overview trailer, that there's going to be a psychic connection between Samus and Sylux. They both seem to have been impacted by their entrance to Viros, and perhaps this is how a lot of the story is told. And actually, in the overview trailer, they do talk about these different Federation Force characters you'll be working with throughout your adventure, but there's one particular clip that appears to be something that's happened in the past the way it's being depicted, as in a special kind of cutscene, and we also understand from the Sylux amiibo that there's literally going to be a story told to us, likely in video form, and you can still get this video by 100% completing the game, but yes, there's going to be a story to tell about who Sylux is. And from this clip, we can see that Samus is offering a hand to this one Federation trooper, and there's fire everywhere. Now, some might think that this is possibly an endgame cutscene or a late game cutscene where Samus is saving one of the Federation troopers at the end of the events of Metroid Prime 4. I think this is highly unlikely because we can see Samus's model. Samus's model is not of a new suit or the Viola suit that she finds throughout the course of the game, and actually we can see that she still has the little green lights on her hip, her calf, and her hand. That would be the normal color she would have in those places with her basic Varia suit that she starts Metroid Prime 4 with. In other words, this is depicting an event that takes place before the events of Metroid Prime 4, before Samus is sent to Viros and obtains these psychic powers. So this is very likely a flashback, and given what I was just talking about, how I already know there's going to be literal cutscenes and voiced dialogue with Sylux throughout Metroid Prime 4, this is probably a little piece to that story. And so, thinking about why Sylux hates the Federation, here we see Samus offering to help a Federation trooper after clearly there's been some sort of great calamity, some sort of great devastation, and this person is kneeling down. We do not know what happens at the end of the scene. Maybe this person swats away Samus's hand, we do not know, but there does seem to be an implication that something happened in the past with a Federation trooper that's worthy of note, and we have Sylux who hates the Federation. So I think it's probably a logical conclusion to make that there's a good chance that Sylux himself was at least associated with the Federation, but perhaps even more likely a Federation trooper, and he might have even been this Federation trooper here. It makes the most sense to think that Sylux used to work for the Federation, because how does he have all this inside knowledge on the Federation? Perhaps because he was once a part of it. And perhaps the devastation from this event, and maybe events leading up to it, has led him to not really look upon the Federation so fondly. Maybe he felt like they were just using all the different troopers, including himself, as pawns. Maybe he lost people he deeply cared for. Maybe he's seen that the way the Federation does research is very dangerous. The Federation has continually done research on Metroids, which throughout the series' history is very questionable from an ethical perspective. And so Sylux might not even necessarily be straight up 100% a bad guy here, but simply a force that's against the Federation. So Sylux might not be 100% evil, and might be sort of a gray character, perhaps even an anti-hero here, or someone who's against the Federation, which could actually be a really interesting story here. However, his actions may lead to some pretty poor repercussions. After all, we do see what happens at the end of Planet Tanimar. He's facing off against Samus, and that leads to the artifact being blasted, which causes this great flash where everyone is sent to what I believe to be a different time on planet Viros. And so maybe it's not even Sylux's intent that there's going to be a new Metroid Prime that will threaten the entire existence of the universe and perhaps beyond, but his actions may ultimately still lead to that. And the opening event of Metroid Prime 4 could be foreshadowing of that. Also from Nintendo Japan's website, we have learned that Metroid Prime 4, and it's been indicated in the past as well, but it's been very clearly stated that Metroid Prime 4 is meant to be a new beginning of a story. And so there is an implication there that there may be a future beyond just Metroid Prime 4. It's not outright 100% confirmed if there will be a Metroid Prime 5 or and so on, although there are rumors suggesting so. But there definitely seems to be a strong chance here, and if these events do lead to a new all-powerful Metroid Prime, then guess what? Samus is going to have some more work to do. And actually, here's another very interesting idea, which might even be meant as a reference to the original Metroid Prime. Maybe there is going to be a super powerful Metroid. Perhaps some of the Metroids are not actually sent over to the future, as we believe when everyone's sent to planet Viros, presumably Tanimar many years into the future. And if that's the case, perhaps some Metroids do evolve and become something more sinister, more dangerous. They have already been genetically mutated. Some have speculated that it's even possible that Metroids could actually be Lemorn, and if this is far off into the future, where did Lemorn come from? Because planet Tanimar is just seemingly a barren wasteland, so what life is there? Well, if there are Metroids left behind for millions of years, then maybe they slowly evolve and mutate into an intelligent species like their parents being the Chozo who created them, and so the Metroids may have it within them to become another intelligent species, the Lemorn. However, as we talked about in yesterday's video, the Lemorn may have also led to their own demise, doing their own crazy experiments and such. That's an interesting possibility I want to put out there, but regardless of whether there are Metroids that have evolved for millions of years or if they just were teleported over alongside Samus, the Federation, and Sylux, what I think there's a very strong chance of, given that Sylux is behind the Metroids taking over so many different enemies, there might be a little bit of karma involved here, and a Metroid, at the very end, may take over Sylux, and perhaps it could even be a super-powered Metroid, and so we could be looking at a scenario where, like at the end of Metroid Prime 1, you have a super-powered Metroid that steals Samus' Phazon suit and becomes Dark Samus. Perhaps there will be a super-powered Metroid that takes over Sylux, a rival to Samus, and becomes something like a new all-powerful rival, somewhat similar to Dark Samus, but not entirely the same. And actually, to further fuel this idea of there being a superpowered Metroid, as we talked about in yesterday's video, we've already seen that the Lemorn were actually harvesting a special green energy from the lava. Not too different from the harvesting of Phazon radiation for different purposes. And we've also seen that there are some enemies that are consumed by this green energy, the Grievers. And what happens if this green energy is consumed by Metroids and then they evolve for millions of years? Perhaps an all-powerful Super Metroid, a new Metroid Prime, one that might even take over Sylux at the very end of the game, leading to something even greater and more deadly. So there's a few different interesting possibilities here, and I feel like some of it is probably going to come true. Perhaps not all of it, but what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget, you can use my code SLEEPRESTART when checking the link in the description below for the Manta Sleep Mask. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.